Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at a Ramp Dragon, because Ramp Dragon is still pretty powerful even now. I've actually been playing a bit today and it's been fairly good. I mean, it does okay in the Daria matchup, especially this variation. Running double con flags is pretty good for that. And in general it just works nicely to clear out Forest and Dragon matchups fairly well as well. So being able to just match up against things like that. The only real downside I've had so far is a aggro matchup, especially aggro Bloods, where they are just quite difficult to deal with in the early game unless you get super lucky with a really good early game. So hopefully you guys enjoy it and we'll get right into some games. Alright, first up of course, the wonderful Shadow match. You can't do much with Shadow normally because Shadow is oppressive, but this deck does quite well due to having so many board clears, especially if you get a good tilting windmill off at the right kind of turn. So I do decide to drop everything, mainly aiming for any kind of ramp or early game that I can get to really take advantage of. Unfortunately we do end up with 5+ drops, so not fun when you get that. But our draw kind of makes up for that with Blazing Breath and Dragon Oracle. Dragon Oracle's great for this sort of match. Being able to play it on 2 and curve out works out really well, especially when we can pretty much curve into a Blazing Breath.
Hades is only so big.
So Blazing Breath and Breathless Salamander are a potential clear here. That will then go straight to the Draconic Fervor, which will then go straight into something like Sybil,
going to hurt you,
which is pretty good. So you really couldn't ask for a much better stable hand, at least for ramping. This is kind of ideally what you want to be able to do. And since we've got double tilting at windmills, at least we have the option. We also get the Dread Sea Queen of the Dread Sea. Great card for dealing with everything. I mean, it's an OTK enabler and really helps in that regard.
Water.
I mean, Queen of the Dread Sea plus an evolved Bill is 19 damage just on its own. All you then need is a single card, any single Dragon Storm, which isn't hard to get. This board is pretty perfect. I mean, Necro Assassin would be the only real trouble card, and even then it would still allow me to have played Tilting Windmills.
Perfect! I was just getting bored!
So Tilting a Windmill should be pretty solid. I mean, we're going to get 4 to face, which will enable a lethal, even though we did just draw Eyes for her. Really no issue at all. Even if they had have played a Hector, we would have still been fine. I mean, they wouldn't have really have killed us at all.
It won't be long now.
Because Hector only would have added 6 to the board. Their current board total is 10, meaning they would still be 3 off. And we have an OTK set up next turn, so we can easily deal over 20 damage. So even if they do heal, it's really no issue for us. The 13 damage just makes this easier. The only real issue would have been a ward, in which case I think Aistraha would have been perfect. I could have just used it to clear it and then gone face with everything else anyway. So Queen is 7, Israfil is 10. If we add the evolve, it would be a potential 12, and the Aistraha has 6, so more than enough to go for a crazy lethal.
I'm leaving.
Plenty enough to kill this Shadow. And of course, the next match is against Rune. Rune has been a lot less common lately, which obviously is pretty normal for a meta. Metas tend to shift as the weeks go on, and usually they do stabilize, but in this case we've mostly seen counter things coming out. So at the moment the top 3 decks seem to be sitting around Daria, Dragon and Forest, with kind of Blood, Portal and a few other classes kind of sitting just below that with how they deal with things. Obviously there are positive matchups and negative matchups, but overall I think based on how they're played and what their matchups are like, those 3 are the top 3 for actually killing most of the meta decks. At least in my opinion, of course. So I go for the 2-drop mainly because I don't have anything else and I want to get something out here. I want to get the 2/2 just on board, even though it does die straight away. Better to have it go out than not. And my Draconic works out really nicely. I didn't actually need the 2/2 for ramping, so there was no point really keeping it. It was better just to play it out and bait something. And of course I can use this to my advantage, being able to just play off this turn pretty nicely, go for an early tilting and set up a potential game over the next couple of turns. The only real risk I've got here is the fact that they could go wide. And that looks like the case. Going wide is an absolute nightmare. If I could draw into Conflag, it would actually be really, really handy, because I don't actually have any other way to really deal with a mass board. That or draw into Israfil could work out well if we used it with Saha, but fortunately none of those are our draws, so most likely just going to get to clear these couple of wards while healing a little bit, which is still a pretty good play. I mean, it keeps us out of any kind of major range and forces a trade onto the Sybil, which is great play for me. And it buys us kind of the one turn we need to at least set up some kind of Dread Queen, like real hardcore lethal going on. So if we can get any kind of storm for Dragon, like Eyes, we actually would have lethal. They also go hard with this Daria, which is really good to see. I like it when that happens because it does mean we're going to have a much easier time dealing with them.
All must come to an end.
So going with the Blade Mage, nice and wide. Deciding that probably the Queen play is the best option here. I mean, it can allow me to do 7 damage to the face, set up a Sybil and the Bahamut, which is both good for my healing and a full board clear, along with an extra 9 damage, which if you included the Evolve, is actually 11, so we're only 2 damage off lethal, meaning any kind of neutral follower is basically game here.
My dance quenches the earth.
And the Sybil alone is just a really solid play. So you get to see Magic Owl. It does get a pretty good trade here.
The dance ends.
And Mysterian Circle, setting up a small ward. Unfortunately not the best card, but it does at least deal with their board immediately, so we don't actually have to worry, so they pretty much just get to pass their next turn by just playing a few things. Which we do get to see another Daria, so it's going to get tight for them, I guess. I mean, they're going to start milling their deck lower and lower, and they're going to be running out of Ogglers and Blade Mages, so it doesn't surprise me that they might not have much left. They're banking on these cards to win at this point. Do get Dragon Oracle, which does give me the draw, and Breath, which is another clear, so this is what this deck's good at. Getting those clears really does help. Although any neutral follower would instantly win me the game, I can't really fault at least getting decent clears. And their final Daria, so Dragon is actually pretty decent at dealing with the Daria matchup. Most board floods can be handled quite well. I mean, by the time they get to their board flood, you're already at your AoE, so that works out really nicely. And Basilisk Raider, another good clear, but still not quite the card we're looking for. It does deal with the Daria. I mean, I didn't want to leave it up in case they did have some potential burst damage at all. Or something like this. Piercing Rune would have been a real problem, because it would have cleared it pretty effectively. And the Nightmare of Golem Assaults. That's usually the only way late game Daria can really survive, so Draconic looking for anything, and at least now we can pretty much guarantee lethal with this Israfil. I mean, doesn't matter what they do, as long as they're not healing, it's a win. And if they ward, which they most likely will due to having played a heap of other cards that were ward based, we can just use the Eyes, but I mean, with what they just did, Israfil's a perfect death. So, gonna work out really nicely. We even top deck another one, so more than enough Israfil here. Ending that game on a high note, that's for sure. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. As always, you will find the deck list for this deck in the description below, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.